going back to Lew Rockwell and then some of your calls. Lew Rockwell, what do you see happening with, because you're a great political strategist, obviously, in our camp, where do you see Obama going? Because as the left finds out he lied about secret arrests and rights for detainees, lied about getting out of Iraq and Afghanistan, lied about not hiring lobbyists, lied and said we'll make all the TARP and money and we'll make all the stimulus money public, and then he signs orders to make it secret. I mean, he is... I never thought I would see it, but worse than Bill Clinton, worse than other, slick lying presidents. I mean, he has got to be the most bold, deceptive liar. And I know I can't really blame him. He literally is the teleprompter president. But the people running him are the most bold liars ever. What do you see happening down the road? Because I see a lot of his support beginning to fall, and they try to have the fake right attack him to get the left to support him, just because the fake right's attacking him, kind of in that control left-right paradigm where the two prop each other up. Where do you see that going?
Alex, I think he's going to be a one-term president. I think that as the economy gets worse, as we face hyperinflation, as we face a significantly lower standard of living, and really the average American standard of living has been falling since probably the 1970s because of the Federal Reserve. So we're about to face another huge dip in our ability to support ourselves and our families. Because of that, I think Obama, may very well be a one-term president. I agree with you that his support is evaporating. On the other hand, I think we all, and I'll also mention a friend of mine's rule: sooner or later, every president makes you nostalgic for his predecessor. I mean, I'm even starting to miss Bush a little bit.
Exactly.
On the other hand, we all have to remember that this vast apparatus of the regime, the president's like a sticky face on the lapel of the suit. I mean, they change that smiley face on there when we get to hate the previous one, but there's still a vast apparatus at work. The president is not actually running all of this. There are many other people involved, both in special interest and in the state itself. But I think because of what the Federal Reserve has unleashed, with what they've done since last fall, especially, although really since 2001 and since 1998 and since 1913 in another sense, that Obama is going to be deeply undermined. I think they're going to have another candidate. But, whether it's Obama or it's Bush the second or it's Obama the second or Hillary or whatever, it's always going to be a criminal. Anybody who's allowed to become president is probably going to be a criminal. But, again, they can be resisted. I would say don't put our faith in what politicians are elected, with the one single exception of Ron Paul. I would say he's the only, in a very long time, the only decent politician there is, the only decent public official. So if we could elect Ron Paul, that's quite a different matter, and oh boy, I only wish we could have done that in 2000.
So do you think we should focus more on the counties and cities and states? The media
we have to focus on localities, on ourselves as individuals. Do we know what we need to know? Have we read books about the Federal Reserve? Do we know about our liberties? Have we read about the case for liberty and the dangers of big government? We have to educate ourselves first and foremost. Then we can have effects on other people. But absolutely, we need to work locally. Forget national elections. I'm sorry to say they have virtually nothing to do with us, and we can't have any influence. We can have influence with the people who like and trust and know us in our own towns and neighborhoods.
Well, I'll tell you, an ace in the hole, and that's why the media is trying to spin it as sedition and rebellion. The states created the federal government, 9th and 10th Amendment. Having 30-plus states move and specifically list gun confiscation, big federal government, signing UN treaties, this is all criminal. To have the states beginning to declare their rightful sovereignty, that is another big solution, and that scares them to death. I've read not just inside Bilderberg Group connections, but later their think tanks putting out exactly what we hear 6 months earlier from our sources, then is being put out by their mouthpieces, that they are scared of Ron Paul. They are scared of the student movements. Students finding out it's not about liberal or conservative, it's about freedom and shattering the paradigm. They are scared of states' rights in counties and cities. They are scared to death of the fact that Americans are buying guns at record rates. Not that we're going to have a shooting war, but that the people are, well, look at the polls. We're becoming a pro-Second Amendment culture again, and even liberals are getting into it. I mean, there's a lot to be positive about, Lew, as you're saying, but I see that as the reason the establishment is kind of taking the velvet glove off and bringing the iron fist in a desperate gamble to try to keep us on the reservation.
I know of a gun shop that has a picture of Obama on the wall, and the label underneath says, "World's Greatest Gun Salesman." So just like Clinton, was responsible for Americans arming themselves. So was Obama responsible for people arming themselves. So this is, of course, all to the good. But they do fear states' rights. It was the evil first Republican president, Abe Lincoln, who said that the federal government created the states. Just one of the many lies he told. Of course, you used to say the states created the federal government. What a mistake, by the way. But anyway, it's wonderful to see states' rights being discussed again. It's wonderful to see secession being discussed again. They thought they had abolished all of this by force of arms and the bullet and the artillery and so forth in 1865. They didn't. They didn't end the cause of freedom, the cause of secession, of decentralization, of local freedoms as versus a highly centralized state.
What should the Pentagon, and we're going to take a few calls and let you go, what should the Pentagon brass be thinking? I mean, they know there's trillions they've stolen, totally corrupt. The mid-level officers and the non-commissioned officers, I talked to them, and they know that treason's going on. They read the MIAC reports and Homeland Security documents saying veterans are what Homeland Security and Northcom is for. The veterans are beginning to discover that Homeland Security is themselves with a gun in their hand with it to their heads. Just like with Hitler, most of his apparatus was about controlling his own state. Same thing with Mao or the Soviets. Ron Paul getting more money than any other candidate from the military. I think the globalists are really a paper tiger unless they can stage things and trick us into going along with them.
Well, it's actually one of the happy events of, I guess, of just human nature, that within the state and within special interests, they all hate each other's guts. So the FBI hates the CIA. The CIA is far more worried about the FBI than any alleged terrorists coming over here. And that's, they focus the whole Pentagon. The Army hates the Navy. The Air Force hates the Coast Guard or whatever. They all hate each other's guts. They're all focused on each other. Various interest groups. The banks hate Wall Street. They all cooperate together to rip us off, but they all hate each other. And because they all hate each other and are competing with each other and seeking to hurt the other to get themselves more money and more power over us, this is all to our good that there's this infighting.
Again,
so
the genius of the founding fathers.
Is great.
Gridlock is good. You're always saying, we want to end the gridlock, a centralized power. But no, that's the opposite of what we want. Absolutely, Lew Rockwell. And that's what the founding fathers talked about, was the separation of powers, to have all these powerful interests coming against each other so they could never combine against the people.
Well, Abraham Lincoln, of course, ended that when he destroyed the original republic and set up what we should really think of as the Second Republic, the Second American Republic, an entirely new form of government, and a bad one.
Yeah, really, it's a centralized kind of imperium of whoever controls D.C.
Well, Robert E. Lee had a very interesting correspondence with Lord Acton after the war, and Acton wrote him, and he said, I'm just heartsick over the fact that you lost, because I know you were fighting the battle of liberty for all of us. And Robert E. Lee wrote back, and he said, because we lost, we will now see the federal government become a despotism at home and an empire overseas. And, of course, that's exactly right.
But those that liked empire in England then cozied up. They said, oh, now we can work with you. Oh, disgusting.
Well, the U.S. is in fact the greatest empire in the history of the world. It's got far more colonies, far more dependencies. We make the Romans, the British, the rest of them just look like dirt under our feet. The U.S. government is the biggest empire ever to exist, but there are problems in that. There are calculation problems. There's a reason that, for example, they can't build themselves a good-looking memorial anymore. If you take a look at the memorials they build themselves to their various wars and other murderous expeditions there in Washington, the recent ones are all ugly. The FDR memorial is ugly. The World War II memorial is ugly. The Korean War memorial is ugly. The Vietnam War memorial is quite a striking thing, but that was built outside the government, and the whole national media hated it and so forth. But if you look at the things the federal government is doing, whether it's the stuff in New Orleans after the hurricane, everything they do is a disaster. So the bigger the thing becomes, the less efficient it becomes, the more bureaucratic it becomes. It's like a great beast stumbling around half blinded. If you end up under one of its feet, you're dead. But it is possible to avoid the feet.
So it's like Frankenstein.
Well, it is like Frankenstein. Yeah, only Frankenstein didn't take our money.
And it didn't have little billions of little SWAT teams that like fall off of it like fleas to run out and, little nanobots. And I meant to get to calls, but we ran out of time. I'll take your calls coming up, folks. And we got Cindy Sheehan later in studio since she's here in Austin, get her take on the Democrats and how they've certainly betrayed what they said they would do. So that is coming up. Lew Rockwell, LewRockwell.com. Always great to have you on. Hadn't had you on in years. You were on with Burma's a few weeks ago, and hopefully start having you up on a routine basis. Thank you for all you do, sir.
Alex, thank you, sir.